tonight's Conversations with the Great Minds, I'm joined by Dr. Mitchell L. Gaynor. Dr. Gaynor is founder and president of Gaynor Integrative Oncology and clinical assistant professor of medicine at Weill Medical College, affiliated with Cornell University and New York Hospital. Dr. Gaynor is also former medical director and director of medical oncology at the Weill Cornell Medical Center for Complementary and Integrative Medicine. He has been listed consecutively in the Best Doctors in New York since 1997 and has served on the board of advisors for Healthy Living Magazine, the SAS Medical Foundation, as well as the editorial board of Integrative Cancer Therapies. Dr. Gaynor is board certified in medical oncology, hematology, and internal medicine, and is the author of 4 best-selling books, including Nurture, Nature, Nurture Health, Your Health and the Environment. Dr. Gaynor joins me now from New York City. Dr. Gaynor, welcome.
Great. It's great to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm curious, what drew you into the work with integrative oncology, integrative cancer therapies to begin with? How did you get into this?
Well, I was trained in very traditional allopathic medicine. I went to one of the best medical schools in the country. I did my medical residency at Cornell Medical Center. I did my fellowship at Cornell Medical Center. I was chief medical resident at Cornell. But as part of my fellowship, I was also at Rockefeller University and studying how different genes could literally be turned on and off, and those genes were responsible for either preventing or leading to cancer. And I was fascinated about the studies of what's called nutrient-gene interactions. So everybody realizes that they're born with the genes they're born with, but most people assume falsely that those genes are their destiny. There's really nothing they can do about it. The fact of the matter is, you're controlling your gene expression by what environmental toxins you're exposed to and by the foods that you're putting in your body. So this was like a complete revelation to me. Here I'd had the best medical training available in the Western world, and no one ever talked about the role of nutrition in preventing cancer or really any other disease for that matter. And I was fascinated to see at the most fundamental level, at the level of our DNA, literally we could control the gene expression for thousands of different genes that related to every aspect of our health. And so I really pursued that after I finished my fellowship, and research has really borne out the fact that we are what we eat, that there is a field called epigenetics, which is the field of gene expression. And a lot of people think that gene therapy is something that maybe in 50 or 100 years is going to have some use. The fact of the matter is, everybody is doing gene therapy on themselves every time they're putting food in their body, either for good or for harm.
So by gene expression, what you mean is that a gene, I think people know that genes like cause their color of their hair or the color of their eyes, and that's probably why they think genetics are so fixed. Yet genes control virtually every process in our body, and you're suggesting that genes can be flipped on or off in ways that alter those processes as a consequence of how you eat.
That's exactly right. And it goes to such a fundamental level that, let's take, for instance, the detoxifying genes. There are enzymes in every cell of the human body that help detoxify against all the environmental toxins. It could be mercury, it could be arsenic, dioxin, pesticide residues, all the things that all of us are exposed to in our air, in our food, in our water. And these get deposited. These can cause mutations in the genes that could lead to problems decades or even generations later. But your body's first line of defense is the detoxifying enzymes to rid it. But these genes that control the detoxifying enzymes are very dependent on nutrients. So there's something, for instance, called the ARE, or antioxidant responsive element. that's part of your DNA, that antioxidants like retinoids, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, and other nutrients like rosemary and garlic and fish oil literally bind to and increase the body's production of detoxifying enzymes. And this isn't some abstract concept. There was a paper published in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute in 1998. They compared women with and without breast cancer. And what they found is women with the lowest levels of the most common detoxifying enzyme had a 4-fold increased risk of developing breast cancer. So we can control so many of these processes for our immune system, for nutrients that allow cancer cells to die normally. One thing a lot of people don't realize, they've done autopsy studies in young adults that died in their 20s in either wars or car accidents, and they find in the vast majority that there's some dormant cancer in some organ of the body. Maybe it'll be in the thyroid, the prostate, the breast, but it's dormant. So the vast majority of people are walking around with some dormant cancer in their body. Clearly, the vast majority of people are not getting cancer or dying of cancer. So the whole goal should be to keep dormant cancer cells dormant. Again, there is a whole science of nutrition and epigenetics that tells us exactly how to do that. There are nutrients that promote what's called apoptosis, or normal cell death. So a normal cell, say in your colon, that's going to mature, it's going to divide, and then it'll die to make room for the new cells. Cancer cells, they just keep dividing. So there are all these nutrients that promote apoptosis, things like in turmeric. Turmeric is what gives curry its yellow color, promotes apoptosis in a lot of ways. There are anthocyanins found in things like grapeseed extract, promote apoptosis. There's resveratrol found in the skin of red grapes, promotes apoptosis. Then there's the whole role of inflammation. So just being overweight puts your body in an inflammatory state. So you can measure this with certain blood tests like C-reactive protein. And the inflammatory mediators of these also promote cancer. So there are a number of things you can do to lower that, also on an epigenetic level. And those are things like fish oil, flaxseed, pumpkin seed, all those types of things will do that. So there's a whole host of things that people can be doing to lower their risk of ever getting cancer in the first place.
Is this why, I mean, you talk about some of the cancer-promoting enzymes, the tyrosine kinase, ATOR, AKT, COX-2. COX-2, there's probably some general familiarity, people with that, knowing that, aspirin, for example, is a COX inhibitor. Is that why low-dose aspirin studies, the really long longitudinal studies, show lower rates of colon cancer, breast cancer, you name it, for people who take low-dose aspirin? And is that the sort of thing that should be done, or are there natural forms of salicylates that people can incorporate into their diets? I mean, what are the things? How do you put together a diet that optimizes your body to not get cancer? I guess is the question I'm asking.
Well, that's the ideal question to be asking, because there are very simple things, and this isn't something that you have to spend a lot of money on to do. There are very simple things. Let's take one thing like green tea. Green tea has been associated epidemiologically with lower risks of breast cancer and a number of other cancer. It contains polyphenols. Again, it decreases abnormal angiogenesis. So for a tumor to start to grow, it needs new blood vessels. But those blood vessels are very abnormal. They're not like the blood vessels in the rest of the body. They're very dysmorphic, and it's just like a random mass of blood vessels. And so there are certain nutrients that decrease abnormal angiogenesis. Again, these are things like turmeric, green tea. You mentioned aspirin. cyclooxygenase 2, or COX-2, which a lot of people know about for arthritis because it's activated and it promotes inflammation, equally promotes abnormal angiogenesis associated with cancer. And that's why low-dose aspirin has in numerous studies been associated with not only a lower risk of cancer, but a lower risk of recurrence once you've already had cancer. Equally important to the inflammatory component is the glucose component, the sugar component. And that's important for a number of reasons. You were mentioning AKT. So there are a number of enzymes that are very dependent on something called insulin-like growth factor. So if you have refined sugar or refined flour, those types of foods, candies, cookies, cakes, that requires a lot of insulin to metabolize. Every time your pancreas is making insulin to break down those sugars, your liver is making a corresponding amount of something called IGF, or insulin-like growth factor. That's like giving gasoline to a car. The more you give, the more it grows. So people with high circulating insulin levels, high circulating insulin-like growth factor levels, have a higher risk of prostate cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer. And we know that just eating the wrong types of foods that have very high glycemic index really raise those insulin-like growth factor levels, and there are a number of things people can do to lower that, to make your body more efficient.
That's great. Well, let's get into those right after the break. More conversations with great minds with Dr. Mitchell L. Gaynor right after the break.